Okay, ready when you are.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for coming to our meeting. I see we have some attendees tonight. It's a regular meeting of the Board of Selectmen, February 23rd, 2021. In attendance is myself, Mike Ergo, First Selectman, Nita Kincaid, Selectwoman, Bob Carlson, Selectman, and Christine Dias, Admin Finance for the town. On our agenda, we always have public comments on agenda and non-agenda items at the beginning of the meeting. We respectfully ask that everyone's public comments do not exceed 2 minutes in respect for everyone's time. At this time, we'll open up the floor. If there are any public comments on agenda or non-agenda items, you just have to raise your hand. And I have comments. So Bailey?
Let's see, Brian Rathbun, you are recognized.
Yeah, I saw on the agenda you got budget discussions. And I just wanted to say that I would like to see it be very conservative this year, simply because of the, well, I'll say it like everybody else, the COVID come through and it kind of put the skids on everybody. The reevaluations went up. People got less money. Even our town is helped out by pushing off paying taxes. Some people lost their jobs, and it's just hard to pay bills out here now. And if the budget continues to go up, I'm afraid we're going to lose more people from North Stonington, and I hate to see that. So I hope the selectmen take that all into consideration when they do the budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Let's see. Kathy White, you are recognized. Oh, hold on, messed that up. There we go.
There you go. Hi, how are you? So I'm gonna ask a question about a non-agenda item. I'm gonna on 298 Northwester Road, the school. I know, sir, we're looking to get it rented and everything, which that was voted on to bring income and everything. But every time it's been brought up, the past couple of times I've heard we're giving it probably to May. If that's not an option, the word has been mentioned about selling. So, you know, and I've been here my whole life, and I know that was a gift from the Wheeler family, and I know there's a deed restrictions there. So, and I still don't understand why that keeps being brought up, because people are going to question why it's being brought up. Seeing it's a gift, they're going to want to make sure you get it rented. So my question to you, Mike, and I know it's been stated, it was advocated, and also I know it was by Bob Carlson, by the Board of Finance, because it was mentioned then, and it was mentioned at your Board of Selectmen's meeting last time, about talking to the library. Have you talked directly yourself, Mike, to the library and to the board and asked questions and about this, because it's going to come up, because May's coming, and this is not going to end bringing this up if you can't get it rented. So have you gone directly to the library and asked them these questions?
If you're asking if we've specifically spoken with the library about selling the building, is that what your question is?
The land, yes. Have you gone and talked to them about the deed restrictions and talking to the library? Yes.
We've talked to the library a number of times about the building. So the library's heard about the discussions we've had, but we haven't made any official requests to the library about that. First of all, if there were any sale of the building, yes, we would definitely, obviously, talk to the library to make sure there was an understanding there. The deed makes it so that it's supposed to be used for educational use. So that doesn't mean the town has to own it for that to happen. It just means that the educational use should continue, should it remain on the deed. The other thing is if the building were to be sold, which again, that's only something that's just been brought up as an idea, that would have to go through a town process, a town meeting. So there's a whole lot of work that would have to be done. So again, when we have these meetings, I just want to bring up many times, a lot of the times we're discussing them for the first time as ideas because our board doesn't have the luxury of having side conversations or meetings outside of public meetings. So we have to discuss even ideas in meetings where we are talking about them for the first time and the public is even hearing about them for the first time. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes.
Okay, I don't see any other hands. So with that, we can move on to the third agenda item, which is the Emergency Services Operations Committee report. So just for the benefit of everyone on the call, the selectmen last year had chosen to appoint a committee to look at the operations of our emergency services in an effort to kind of understand what other communities were doing, best practices, and to really understand kind of where we fell into the mix. We had asked that this group kind of come up with some findings. I don't think their report is completely done, but since we are in budget time, we wanted to kind of get an update as to where they're at with regards to their findings thus far as a committee. I just want to point out this is not a joint meeting of those two committees, so I will only call on the chair of the committee to speak tonight, just because we didn't post it as a joint meeting, and I don't want to have any problems with not posting a meeting correctly or whatnot. So I know Tricia is here. She's taken up the chairwomanship role of this committee. So I'd like to bring Tricia in to kind of talk about the report that she submitted to us, which I think was posted as well online for everyone to see, along with the rest of our packet. So Tricia, we just have to promote Tricia. And then you just have to unmute and welcome Tricia.
All right, hello. Okay, so I guess this is my first time coming to one of your meetings, so thank you for having me. And so I was secretly hoping to lean on some of my fellow committee members, but they're not here, so, or they might be, but it's just me, so I understand that. But can I share my screen with you, or?
Yes, you should be able to. We just have to make sure you're promoted, and I think you have to start your video first of all in the bottom left-hand corner, and then we can make you a co-host so you can share your screen.
I think I have to, I only allowed her to talk, so I have to make her a panelist. Hold on.
Yep.
Okay, so now you'll just have to unmute and you should be able to share your screen.
Oh, yeah, thank you, because I was still talking.
My bad.
All right, let me see. I hope I'm sharing the right thing.
Yes.
That was so little. Okay, good. I was like, oh, I couldn't really see it. Okay, so are you seeing the email or just the Word document?
We can see the email on the right.
Okay,
and yeah.
so I don't want to do that. Stop.
Yep.
Sorry,
it
was very small. Bear with me.
Take your time.
Is this it? That's it. Okay. I think this is it.
Got it.
All right. I had multiple things up. So, okay. So we've spent, basically, I'll make this quick because we still have a lot of work to do. But the lot of work we do have left should go, I hope, pretty quickly, because a big part of what we did was take some time to be very conscientious about getting data. But to get data, we had to first figure out what data we wanted, and then where were we going to get that data from. So you can kind of see let me scroll through here. So our approach summary. So that's kind of where I want to start. And you guys have access to this on the website. You said you posted it, and it was a part of the agenda.
I don't know, I was looking at my packet. I don't know if it did get posted, but we will, now that we're sharing it live time, that's fine. And I'll make
Okay.
sure that we do post it afterwards.
If you want, I can go a little slower then and just kind of go through.
Yeah,
everything.
that'd be great.
It's page 3.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, voice in the back. Okay.
And I didn't get this until after we had submitted the packet on Monday, I think. So I think that's why it didn't make it in there.
Okay. So basically, and you kind of talked about already what our purpose was. Our purpose is to research best practices, cost consolidation, and service contracts for North Stonington emergency services. So our first part of this draft is really focusing on the fire department end of things. And then you'll hear more from us in regards to ambulance services. So these are our committee members, myself, although I think it should be chair. I didn't even notice that, but Chair, Vice Chair is Carl Johnson, Secretary Sarah Nelson. And then we also have representatives from North Stonington Fire Company, our Chief Charlie Steinhardt, and North Stonington Ambulance Association President Jim Tuttle. So a broad range. We have experts in the field to individuals like me who we've been learning a lot as we go. It's been quite enlightening. So just to kind of go through our scope and approach. So like I was saying, the first part was deciding what data we wanted to collect. And it started with, let's look at our town. So we kind of focused on our town and our demographics and trying to find comparable towns to that. And then we reached out to them via a survey. So a lot of the base information that we collected was from a website called Advanced CT, which was quite useful. And if you're a data junkie, that would be a great website for you to check out. Just a little tip. It has on all the different towns in the state of Connecticut. So that's the first place we went. And then we went to the individual town and department websites, and we built from there, once we decided what towns we were going to focus on, from there we built a survey, a comprehensive survey that we then submitted to over 100 ambulance and fire departments. We utilized Chief Steinhardt's email list that went out locally, and then we also sent it out to target towns. And a lot of the towns, it should be said that a lot of the towns that we focused on weren't in this area when we were looking at the demographics in terms of size of the towns, geographic size, and the population size. So just want to see what else I want to specifically point out to you that you can't read yourself. This is what I wanted to, really talk about is North Stonington's demographics. We're the 9th largest town by square mileage. We took to keep all of our data sets, you have updated annual revenue information, but we wanted to keep our data set the same and uniform compared to what towns we chose to compare ourselves to. So we, again, used the information from the Advanced CT website, even for our own town, just to keep everybody kind of the same. So you'll see here, according to Advanced CT's website, for 2016, 2017, the annual revenue was 21.5 million. And also discussing that North Stonington Volunteer Fire Company manages the largest area square mileage covered by a single station. manages around 375 calls per year, including 75 calls, around 70, these are approximates, around 75 calls for EMS, has around 40 volunteers, which is around 0.7% of the town population. And it has higher amounts of high hazard traffic compared to towns demographically similar. So what that means is what I was saying at the beginning is we chose a group of towns, and I should tell you what they were, to compare to the fire department. We looked at Goshen, Sharon, Kent, Pomfret, Salisbury, Woodstock, Thompson, Lebanon, Haddam, Litchfield, and East Haddam. And this is in regards to the fire department. So those towns don't necessarily, they don't share a major highway, and they don't have on the other side of their town, they don't have a major destination of the casino. So those are the kinds of things that make us really different and set us apart and give us a little bit more, even though we might be similar to some degree demographically to these other towns, they don't share our same challenges. So that's something that we wanted to point out. All right, so some of our key observations. That I just want to focus on that are of particular note. I mean, I don't want to read through the whole thing because you guys can read it yourself, and that's a silly report to, just read back to you everything that we have given to you. But one of the things that has come up that we've noticed through all of our research is the weakest link for our fire department. And there's more recommendations that are coming. So we have an immediate short-term recommendation for you. And that is that we don't have enough support during our daytime hours. One of the things that I found striking, we had an individual come to one of our meetings from another town in Pennsylvania. And he was talking about, there was one instance where he had experienced where there wasn't enough coverage. And it was something that was very striking to me. So we're asking our people to put themselves into harm's way. So we need to make sure we give them the right support. So one of the places that we're seeing lacking is daytime paid firefighters. There will be other, oops, I'm highlighting the wrong thing. So we're seeing a shortage of daytime volunteers, which is a struggle. So we don't have enough daytime volunteers. So that's the big missing gap. And we're seeing that nationally. And that's one of the things we've heard from Charlie from some of the information he's received, and this other individual from Pennsylvania, they're seeing that same struggle. And even in a place where during COVID, where we're seeing a lot of people working from home, even with that, we're seeing a struggle with filling volunteer hours during the day. So we really feel that we need to increase some daytime support. So it could come in some of these ways of remedying that. Some level of paid staffing is required to ensure adequate and timely response during daytime hours. Evaluate the option, evaluate the option of an annual salary stipend to incentivize town employees in their participation in volunteer in the North Stonington Volunteer Fire Company, or consider incentive to North Stonington businesses to enable town resident employees to become North Stonington Volunteer Fire Company volunteers and support daytime calls, because that's where we're really at the most risk. And we're seeing a larger increase of calls. The number of calls aren't going down over time, they're going up. Another recommendation is to increase volunteerism in general. So this is kind of not just for North Stonington Volunteer Fire Company or for the ambulance, but just increase volunteerism in general. So for the fire department, referral bonus for new recruits that pass the probationary period. So that's one idea. But in general, townwide, to increase volunteerism, consider doing a townwide volunteer drive, like a volunteer fair for all commissions, boards, emergency services, something like that. So, and have it become an annual thing where each year you're reaching out to the community and letting them know about the different volunteer opportunities that are available throughout the town, and the fire department being a key one of them. Also, for the North Stonington Volunteer Fire Company to collaborate with the EDC to identify potential businesses to approach regarding volunteering opportunities with their staff. There might be businesses in the area that would allow their staff members, their employees to come to, maybe there's different degrees of fires or emergencies that they would allow their team to go to reach out to support. But these are other ideas that we have to help cover some of that. Another important crucial piece is retaining our volunteers. So potentially looking into adding a municipal tax credit for volunteers, adding a physical fitness program benefit. There's not really a sense of place necessarily at the fire department, like a place where you congregate. So how can we help create a sense of congregation at the fire department for those volunteers to encourage more of that camaraderie and more of that coming together? And then increase length of service award programs for active members. So these are kind of some immediate ideas that we've come up with, but we're not stopping there because this is immediate, but we also wanted to look at, and we understand immediate budget constraints as well. And so that's within our frame of thinking, but we also wanted to look in the future, like what would the ultimate be? What if one day there was a massive grant that became available to the town and you needed to look back at something and say, okay, the Emergency Services Operations Committee said this is what we needed, and now here's an opportunity to get it, but you'd have this report to look back on. So we want to set that stage for the future as well. And we're almost there. We're not quite there yet, but we wanted to get this to you so you could see what we're working on and where we're at. We do have more work to do, particularly in the ambulance end of things as well. So that's our short term. Sorry, I was a little jumpy around. I didn't want to just read the whole thing to you and you can read yourself. And I wanted to get to the recommendations. So yeah, let me know if you stop me there. And I mean, you can see we have other recommendations coming for the ambulance and future recommendations, but which we already have some in mind, but wanted to have the report to back it up.
Tricia, thank you for that.
You're welcome.
No, I really appreciate it. You guys have done pretty good work, and excited about hearing the rest of it. And thank you for coming in. You know, I know you're not done yet, so just obviously kind of moving forward to get here as we're trying to put our budgets together, you know, soon here. Do the selectmen want to ask any questions of Tricia while she's here? Go ahead, Bob.
Hi, Tricia, how are you?
Hi, good, thanks. How are you?
Good, thanks. So I have a question on the part where I talked about other towns with multiple fire stations, and when we talked about us being the 9th largest land area in the state, was there any discussion with your committee to look at the cost of adding, just to throw two places, let's say Clocks Falls and Northwest Corner? And I'm not saying that because I live in Northwest Corner, but it's far away from the other station.
Seriously, I was running late on my way home and I was like, oh my God, I'm in town, but it's going to be another 15 minutes till I'm home. Yeah.
Exactly. So
Yes.
has there been any cost analysis on having satellite stations And if we did have satellite stations, would it cut down on arrival times for the firemen? Or with the fact that we're all volunteers, it really wouldn't cut down on arrival times to say a fire down in Clarks Falls or a fire up, not my way up the northwest corner, so.
That in terms of cost analysis, that has not come up in terms of drilling down on what that would look like. And then if it would, how it would be formatted to, the goal would be to cut down on response time if there were additional stations, right? Additional substations. So, for example, driving home today, that's exactly what I was thinking about when I was driving home tonight. I was thinking how ironic I'm heading to this meeting to talk about emergency services. And one of the challenges in our town is our geographic size, and it limits the capability for that response time. So that's why you'll see that future recommendations. And, you know, if there was an opportunity to have funding for additional, I'm not sure what that state, I don't want to misspeak.
Mhm.
I don't know how I'd say a substation or what have you, or another department, what that would look like. So we need to talk about that a little bit more as a committee, but knowing that there's probably budget restraints like that for that right now, but why would we need one? You know, and we would put that in our report and include why it's so essential that would be something to look at down the road.
No, and I agree. I think your committee was charged with looking at the fire company today, you know, and in the future, whether it be 5, 10, or 20 years down the road.
Right.
On the 6 towns that did talk about having multiple stations, you know if those stations were manned or unmanned? I mean, I know in Rhode Island, there's some towns I'm familiar with that have unmanned stations that has a truck in them, or we'll say 2 trucks in them, but they're not all the firemen, they're volunteers. There's not a full-time fireman at each station. Do you know on these towns that responded, if they were manned stations or volunteer stations?
That's a great question. So I don't think that was on our survey, but we'll make sure we incorporate that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that.
I'm good.
Nita, do you have any questions or comments?
Not really. I've certainly learned a lot from the ladies, so I've gone to most of the meetings.
I think I'm glad that we're getting data from some like-sized towns from a geographic standpoint. I recognize some of the unique characteristics that North Stonington has, but I think it is good to have a good data set to work with. So I'm really appreciative to the time that the committee's put into gathering data to make sure we're making database decisions here. And I think that was the point of this. You know, I think we appointed this group, you know, knowing that some of these issues, but really wanting to get some data to kind of, you know, help support decision-making going forward. So I look forward to hearing more about the ambulance as well. I think you're probably aware, you know, they've come forth this budget cycle with the proposal within the budget monies they've had to fund full-time staff, which is a big difference and quite frankly makes a lot of sense if they can do it with the monies that they've been allocated, and it'll provide a better service. So I think that, you know, I don't know if some of these decisions, you know, maybe the work your committee's done has helped, you know, maybe influence some of these decisions. So I think it's good. And so I think, you know, from my perspective, I look forward to seeing more of you know, more of the finished product whenever you guys get more data. And, you know, for now, we'll be talking about, you know, the budgets tonight for the emergency services anyway. So I thought it was timely to at least get a snapshot of where you're at. So.
Thank you. I do want to add, just for anybody that is, you know, listening, and we didn't just stop at those towns. We also looked at the towns right in our surrounding area. I apologize, I didn't mention that, because our neighbors are very similar to us in terms of they have the same challenges with the highways, the casino, major tourism areas. So I wanted to mention that as well. So we included them in our research.
All right, well, with that, I think we can conclude if the selectmen are done, and we'll move on to our next agenda item. So Tricia, thanks for coming in and sharing your info with us. We really
More to
appreciate
come.
it. Yes,
Thank you.
look forward to it. All right, so we'll move on to agenda item number 4, which is appointments. Unless the selectmen had anything else they wanted to talk about with regards to that. No, okay. So we have a couple of appointments. We have a letter taken up first for inland wetlands. We have a recommendation from Chairman Grigg on behalf of Adam Vernot to join the commission. You have an application from him there? Any feedback, discussion, or anything with regards to that appointment?
Mike, the only feedback I have is the fact that as a commission, they voted to unanimously add this person to their committee. So I would think they would know better than we would as far as who they want on the commission, who would make sense. So I wouldn't stand in the way of that.
Nita?
I agree with that. However, we have to vote on it because we're supposed to be saying who it is.
Yes.
So.
Oh, yes. I wasn't going to say we're going to skip it, Nita. No, I was just saying. No.
No, I mean, Adams states that he's got some engineering experience. He works with engineers, owns a business involving coastal construction, and has a background in water resources. So I think that's all good. And I think inland wetlands is a really important board in town to make sure that we need to do our best to preserve these really, and watch out for these really important resources we have in North Stonington. So we'd entertain a motion to appoint Adam Vernot to the Inland Wetlands Commission.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 3-0-0. The second group of, I was very enthused that we already received, I think we talked about with regards to the traffic commission putting together a group of 5 to include the resident trooper, the highway foreman, and then 3 residents at large. And lo and behold, we got 3 pretty good applications for residents at large for the traffic commission. So any discussion on the those who stepped forward on that?
No discussion, Mike. I read all the applications and I was fine with them.
So for the benefit of the public, again, this was all posted on the packet if you didn't take a look on the website. The Traffic Commission, we've got Britt Tella, who is offered to step up and has a great interest in the community safety, and in fact was paramount in bringing forth recommendations down in Billings Lake area where we made some changes. So I know she's actually been involved in trying to improve the community. We've got Lori Sosha, who's a police officer, and obviously would bring a great benefit to the community with her experience serving on the school safety committee. And then Steve Sawyer, who's been involved, I know, in the fire company for a long time and very well regarded, and I think would be a super addition to this group. So I think it's a really strong group that will, hopefully be able to help us make improvements and make good recommendations to the selectmen. So I would suggest that we proceed with the recommendation of these 3 individuals to this commission, and then we can work towards getting them set up.
I will vote in favor of this for sure. But when I read all of these, I wanted to mention one thing too while we're in this group. And that is all these people have a lot of jobs and work that they're doing. And it just comes into my mind how some of the times when we put together a committee, we find out that they can't work together, not because they can't work together, but there's no way to figure it out. I don't know how you deal with something like this, honestly.
Well, in this one, we very specifically told them that they would be meeting during the day. Because we weren't looking to have overtime for anyone that's not, that's going to be employees, basically, whether it's the trooper or the highway. And they were aware of that when they submitted their application. We also laid out the fact of how often we saw this group meeting. So I think the expectations were clear. So I don't see any issue with that because I think we made the expectations clear.
I think if it wasn't we were not still in pandemic, it would be really nice when we get rid of that, that we couldn't see these people, when we were doing it, just to get a sense of things. But anyway, yes, I think we should go ahead.
And we still could, Nita. I mean, we could invite them if you prefer to a future meeting, if you'd like. I mean, they're going to, as we stated it, we plan to have them report to us, like basically on a regular basis on the selectmen's meetings. But if you wanted to meet them before appointing them, that, we could do that too.
It just came into my mind again because of the fact that some of the committees work and some of the committees don't work. And a lot of it is differences of their availability or real interest of understanding what they're working on. But I'm fine.
Okay. All right. So is there a motion to appoint Stephen Sawyer, Britt Tella, and Laura Sosha to the Traffic Commission?
Yeah, I'll make that motion, Mike.
I'll second.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, so I'll reach out to them and I'll take the lead on getting that all set up and getting them meeting for the first time and all that. And make sure that the expectations are clear.
My question, Mike.
Yep.
With these subcommittees, do they have to do the same steps as a regular committee does? In other words, would they be working with Antoinette? Would they be turning in information to, okay, it's going to still.
Yeah, they have to submit meeting minutes and their meetings should be public and all that kind of stuff as well. So they have to, yeah. And so basically they'll meet and they'll report back to us basically as an agenda item on a regular basis as needed. Okay. The next item is the ethics policy discussion. Bob, I think the last time we left it off, you were going to do some follow-up.
That's correct.
Chance or not?
No, I have. I have spoken to both Cynthia, who's the town clerk in Stonington. I talked to Jill, who's the town clerk in Preston. And I also spoke to the chairman of the Ethics Commission in Preston too. So here's what I'm finding out the more we get into this. We definitely need a more updated code of ethics, which is what I was working on. And I think on the code of ethics itself, we're mostly there. The commission's a different story. That's what I found where the code of ethics was pretty similar in most towns. The commissions aren't, as how they handle the commissions aren't. And there's a lot of questions that have to be answered. So I'm going to just mention a couple of things about it. And then my recommendation would almost be to have us decide on and maybe form a ethics commission and then have the ethics commission fine tune the code of ethics. Because it's something that it needs more than one person. It needs a lot of looking into. When I get done with some of the things I'm going to talk about just on the commission itself, you'll see that there's a lot of avenues to it. There's a lot of issues that can arise. Sometimes when I was speaking to some of these other individuals, it's almost like be careful what you ask for. So with that said, and I'm just going to use these two towns for now. And if I went to 5 towns, I'd get 5 different versions of how their commission works. But let's talk about Stonington for a minute. So Stonington has a commission of five people, and they have 3 alternates. But the commission's not named. The commission only gets named by the selectmen when there's an issue. So if you ask for an advisory opinion, it goes to their town attorney. If he decides there's enough teeth in it and it should go in front of the commission, at that point, the board of selectmen name a commission. And the way it's named there is in the seated, let's say there's 2 people, one party and one in the other. So in the dominant party of the board of selectmen, they would name 3 of the 5 and name 2 of the alternates. The other selectmen would recommend 2 of the 5 and 1 of the alternates, and then all 5 selectmen would have to vote on all candidates. And then they would hear the code of ethics, excuse me. Hold on for 1 second. They would hear the complaint on the code of ethics, at which point a code of ethics complaint application would be filled out. Prior to filling out that application, if you just wanted to, get an advisory opinion, that's a separate application that has to be filled out. So let's say if someone they thought there might be a code of ethics violation and they wanted to get an advisory opinion, they would fill out this application, and it's pretty much detail on it, naming the person or persons that you want to file the complaint against, what the complaint consists of, and then you're also putting your own information on there. That information goes to the town attorney. If he feels like it has teeth, that has to go in front of the commission. Now you're filling out a separate report on that complaint, at which point, if the commission decides that they will hear it, then it becomes public information. So up until that point, it's not. But once it goes in front of the commission, it goes to public information. And as the question on that is, I was asking the town clerk in Stonington, how often does this come about? And she said, not as often as you would think, because when people have to put their name and information on the complaint, and they know it's going to go public, they typically don't go forward unless they know they have a pretty strong case. So she says it's rare that it gets to that far. Sometimes it goes to the advisory opinion by the attorney, and it stops there. Now, Preston's different. Preston has 3 sitting commission members and 3 alternates. Right now, they only have 1 alternate because they haven't been able to fill the other 2 alternate spots. These, because it's a sitting commission, they actually do meet every year in January to discuss what happened the prior year and how they want to move forward, whether they want to elect a new chairman, if they have cases that are coming up. But again, speaking to them, it's very rare that they have a complaint come forward. Unlike Stonington, Preston also makes their decision on the advisory opinion. That goes in front of their commission, not in front of their town attorney. So the advisory opinion goes to the commission first. If they feel like it needs to take another step, they would move it to a full complaint in front of the commission, which the commission then would hear that complaint. It would become public, and it would move on from there. So some things to think about is, what kind of penalties are there if the commission finds you in violation of your code of ethics? Also, if it's a town employee and there's attorneys involved, who's paying for the attorneys? And if it's a town employee, is a town attorney then representing the town employee, or is the employee getting his own attorney? So there's a lot to it. It's not just cut and dry. And as we look into it, it's easy to write a code of ethics, but it's another thing to enforce it. So, and that's what I zeroed in on was the commissions. We already talked about the code of ethics itself a little bit and talked about how we would have new employees and new sitting members of committees and boards read it, understand it, sign it, that they've read it. So that handles that part. That's actually the easier part. It's the hearing of the complaints and the enforcing of a penalty So I was looking at some possible penalties. Let's see if I have that sheet here. I thought I had it, but I don't. I thought I had it in front of me, but it's a, so everything from, if it's a town employee, from suspending, from, here. So here's some possible penalties, such as censure, reprimand, removal or suspension from appointed or elected office, suspension or termination from employment, a civil fine of not more than the maximum allowed under state law per violation payable to the town general fund, restitution for any financial loss to the town, restitution for any benefits received by the respondent, termination or revocation of any contract with the town, debarment from entering into any future contracts or employment with the town, referral of information obtained and generated by the commission to the appropriate authorities for further civil action and criminal prosecution. It's almost like you have to be an attorney or advised by attorney on these. And it says, upon finding a violation of the code, the commission in its discretion may seek outside counsel and impose penalties. So there's a lot to it. And I'm thinking that this, if we wanted to move forward with this, and I'm not saying we shouldn't, because I think we should, I think we would be best to follow maybe Preston's lead and appoint a seated commission with alternates, and have that seated commission then, as part of their job, would be to go through the code of ethics, fine tune it, update it as needed, make sure that that new people in the town, whether the employees or seated officials, have seen the commission, have seen the Board of Ethics, and they've signed it. But I think it's too much for one person. And I also think it's too much for the Board of Selectmen, since we don't have workshops and we really don't talk except for these meetings. It's tough for one person to do this and then have to have it heard. It'd be easier for the commission to do it, come in front of the Board of Selectmen and then go in front of the town to, and in all towns, the commission is decided on. The code of ethics is adopted at a town meeting, and the commission is approved at a town meeting, at least in most towns. So that's my thought on it. I think we can do all the legwork, or I can do the legwork, but when it gets to the nitty gritty of enforcement penalties and how we're going to do it, and we have a lot of towns we can look at as examples, my best guess would be we would appoint a commission and then have them handle the lion's share of this, of fine tuning it and then moving forward.
So a couple questions I have, Bob. And I don't know if we talked, I don't think we talked about this on a meeting yet, but have you looked at, because I know the state has an Office of State Ethics, and they have a bunch of rules, regulations, and things of that nature. They've even got a hotline. As you're talking through this, I'm thinking to myself, maybe the state has some things that would support us versus us having to reinvent the wheel. Did you look into any of the state stuff? I know we hadn't talked about it. I'm just curious.
No, I haven't, but I could do that as the next step going forward. But I think that what I did notice is there wasn't a town I looked at that I couldn't find some sort of code of ethics or some sort of a commission. So I think that, not in lieu of setting up our own, but to get help and guidance in setting up ours, it might be a good idea to go to the state and get guidance from them, which I don't mind doing. So.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea then, and Nita said the same thing. Because even the other thing that just came to my mind was, I'm just trying to think, it's like what are other ways to make it so people, when you described Stonington, you described a situation that would make it so someone would be pretty uncomfortable making an ethics complaint. And I'm not sure if that's how we'd want it. I almost wonder, is there, do you want an anonymous hotline, for instance? I think there's companies that might do that, if somebody felt there was something that they wanted to report, that they could do that. I don't know if I don't have, I'm just spitballing here. I'm just kind of curious.
So I don't think it's to try to make someone uncomfortable, but I think you wouldn't want a bunch of frivolous accusations that the town attorney is working overtime on just to reject 95% of them. So when you say uncomfortable, if someone feels and they really have a strong feeling that someone has violated the code of ethics, they should be willing to fill out the application and put their information on it and the reason why they think the code of ethics was broken. So it's not to make someone feel uncomfortable, but if they have a strong enough conviction to do that, then maybe there's not a strong enough case. So I just think that it's I would hate to have some sort of an anonymous hotline where we're fielding, 20 calls a day. I mean, you can look at social media and get that information there, people with accusations. So I'm just thinking that it has to have teeth. You have to have some skin in the game. If you want to bring a application forward for a violation, then you should be willing to back it. People always say if you sign it, if you have a complaint, sign it, put your name on it. And this is the same thing here, is you have to be willing to put your name.
So
I do think going to the state's a good idea to get some more information.
So do you want to do that? And we'll
Yeah.
discuss findings maybe at our next meeting. I know there's a phone number. There's actually a website for the state Office of State Ethics.
Yeah, I've seen that. I just figured we'd go local for us to see what our neighbors were doing.
Yep.
And again, there's no sense of reinventing the wheel, but I will tell you this, like I said, all the towns I looked at, and I probably looked at about 7 or 8 in total. Everyone had some sort of a code of ethics and some sort of a hearing committee or a commission. So, but I can get information from the state to tell them we're trying to set something up and if they would give us some advice on how to move forward.
Yeah, they might even have somebody who'd come talk to us possibly, I don't know, but that'd be great if you could do that, and then we can put it on the next agenda and keep moving forward.
I think it's something the town needs. I think it's the right idea, but I think we also need to do it right, and make sure that I want to be one of those towns that other people look at us to say, look at North Stonington does, they do it the right way, and I think that's what we need to do. So.
Very good. Anything else, Nita? On that? Okay. All right. Next item is the budget. Just give me 1 second. I'll be right back. Right. Yep, I saw Anita is gone. We'll just take a quick second here.
Yep.
Wonderful. All right, thank you for that brief break there for a second. All right, so the budget. So as just for the benefit of everyone here, we are continuing our budget look at here. We've had a couple discussions, and for those who did look at the packet online, and just to preface the fact that that's, again, just draft at this point, and we are continuing to make changes, and that's part of what we'll do tonight. I think we left off, the only parts of the budget we haven't looked at were the emergency services parts of the budget. We've already discussed a lot of it, but you know, tonight's basically what we have is really the last meeting before we go to the Board of Finance to present a budget. So with that being said, I don't know if we want to go through, if you want to go through page by page again, or if we want to just kind of go right to the emergency services part of it to discuss those. Is there a preference from the board?
Mike, let's just go to the changes that we made since the last meeting, just to confirm they were in there and they're what we talked about, so.
Christine, do you have an easy way to summarize what we discussed last time? And that,
No, I do not.
Mike, I have them all marked down on my budget, so I know what they are. There's not that many, actually.
okay.
Oh, good.
Well,
I was gonna bring my other one. That's a
yeah.
good idea.
No, that's, I mean, we can do it that way. That's just a summary of what we did last time, which we've already done that. So I'm just, that's fine if that's what you want to do. I'm wondering if.
I just want to let those that are listening know. So I looked at the last budget we had from the last time we went through, and then the next one, and I looked at the changes just to make sure. And I did notice that we've added in the revenue line, the DRA grant, which was the grant for the electric vehicle, because that's been added in, wasn't in the last budget line item, but it is a line item in this budget. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes. I would just caution, we've actually made a couple of budget iterations. So if we're going to start rehashing what we already did from the very first one, I don't have that necessarily
Oh,
either.
no, I was just doing this since the last meeting, but
Okay.
I mean, if you don't want to go through them, we don't have to. It's just.
No, I just want the public to be aware that we've made additional, like, even if you can go through those, but just to preface that we've made even additional modifications even before that as part of our process. I think this is our third or fourth meeting that we've had as we're narrowing down the budget. So feel free, Bob, to certainly summarize what we did since the last, to summarize from the last meeting.
Well, there wasn't that many, but we raised the travel recognition from 5,000 to 10,000. It was on the second page.
Mhm.
And in case I missed something, and the most of it was in capital because that's where we started last time. I noticed that, Christine, we took out the bulky waste line C 2.02. It was in there for 25,000. We not only removed the money, but we also removed the line. Is there any reason why we did that?
So the line hasn't been funded in any budget, so if we cut it, there's no reason for it to be a part of the document.
So even though it may get funded at a future budget, you want to add it then at that point?
Right, you would add it back in at that point.
Okay. I also noticed that on the land space acquisition, which was originally at $29,000, an increase of $29,000 has been dropped down to an increase of $7,000. The 1750 house or Gallup house, we took the repairs from 10,000 to 15,000, so we went up 5,000 on that. We eliminated the $50,000 for the sewer infrastructure. And we put in two new line items on the capital C 3.51 on the water infrastructure for 25,000, and we put in C 3.52 department review consultant. And that was something that we spoke about at the end of the last meeting, that we all felt that going backwards, so it was something that maybe we should have looked at. And we all agreed to put it back in to see what feedback we get from the Board of Finance on that. So that was pretty much the changes from the last meeting. As you said, Mike, there was many more changes starting from the beginning, but I just wanted to be up to date that we got what we were supposed to get in at the last meeting. It has been added or subtracted. The one thing I will say, and I'm going to bring it up when we get to the minutes, is that those decisions aren't reflected in the minutes. Like we have some are and some aren't, and I just think that either we should reflect them all in the minutes, or it would just say there was discussion had been had, but we do have some, but not all of the decisions in the minutes.
So the minutes reflect what motions were actually made. Not all the changes were made as motions. Bailey and I discussed it the next day to see what the minutes should reflect, and I told her to just strictly put in what was an actual motion made by someone. You guys can change that, but we wanted to just go to the letter of what motions were actually made.
Okay, so we'll talk about that when we get to the minutes, but thank you.
So
Okay.
that was.
So that was
No,
all the
thank-
changes, so now we can review however you want to review it, Mike.
Yeah, we can talk about what you want to include there. All right, so why don't we just go through the budget page by page to see if there's any additional changes that we want to make on any of these pages. Because we got to, this is our last chance to make anything substantive prior to putting together the Board of Finance presentation. So on page 1, we've got basically taxes and intergovernmental revenues. We have left the same current general property tax number from last year to this year, which I think could be discussed with the Board of Finance if there's any changes we want to make there. But I think we talked about last time just being conservative and leaving it. Most of this is revenue. The only thing I would say is we did not include any proposed revenue for the 298 Northwesterly at this point. Should there be some sort of offer or anything that comes in, I think we would want to consider discussing that. But right now we have no potential revenue besides the Board of Education's contribution to the utilities, which is the only thing that's included. So,
Mike, while you're there at the 298, and we don't need to discuss that project, it's because it's not on the agenda tonight, but just as a budget item, if the realtor just was able to rent, let's say 2 or 3 rooms, okay? And let's say that 2 of them are in the 2-story wing and one's in the 1-story wing. How does that affect us down the road if there's, and I know it still have to go in front of the town, even if it's only 1 room, correct it, a lease agreement, so it's to go in front of the town on any town property? Is that correct?
what has to go in front of the town?
So if we decide to lease out any portion of that building, since it's a town building, it still has to go in front of the town for approval once we just talk about.
No, we already brought it to a town vote for the middle school wing. We haven't brought it to a town vote for the 2-story wing. So yes, that would need to go to a town. Now, the Board of Selectmen talked about this just a couple meetings ago, and I had suggested, or at least suggested for discussion, that we bring the 2-story wing to a town meeting now to preemptively get ready to lease it out. And that was not favorably looked upon by this board. So we chose not to do that. So to answer your question, Bob, if somebody wants to rent out the middle school wing, we've done everything necessary to rent that out. If somebody wants to rent out the 2-story portion, we have work to do to get permission to rent that out.
All right, so if you remember, the reason we held off on the 2-story wing is we said we had plenty of time because we still have to go back in front of the town on the agreement itself, on the lease agreement itself with the town to get town approval. And I think you're incorrect on the 1-story. Even though we have approval to rent it, I think we agreed that we still have to go back in front of the town to get approval on the lease.
No, I'm not incorrect on that. We've gotten a town attorney opinion already on that. We've already gone to the town. And
We're not with a lease agreement, we haven't.
No, and that's not necessary.
So we don't have to get approval from the town if we, again, let's go back to that scenario where if we're renting out two single rooms in a two-story wing and one in the one-story wing, and then we put let's say it's a 1-year lease or 3-year lease, whatever it is that the lease agreement is, you're telling me that the selectmen will then look at that and we'll decide on if it makes sense or not. And then if we, let's say that we agree that, and I still think it has to go in front of the town, but we agree that's a 1-year lease agreement, and then we get someone that comes in and wants to lease the entire building, we're kind of stuck because we got one room leased and now the building is not fully available because we're doing it in piecemeal. So
I agree with you, Bob. I would say, why don't we talk about that when we have a problem like that to talk about? Because right now we don't, and we have enough to discuss. So obviously this is something that'll warrant more discussion.
all right, we'll table it for now.
Thank you. All right, so we're on page 1. I don't know if there was anything else here that I was aware of that would be for further discussion beyond our last meeting. Is there anything you guys wanted to talk about on here?
No.
Just if the electric vehicle gets knocked off the budget, then obviously that 167,942 has to come out of revenue. So
It does, and just for the record, based on how we have this figured, that would actually increase the budget by $67,000 because we're taking all the revenue from the grant and we have it in here as a lease, which is actually, the lease payment's actually less than what the grant is. So just to make sure everybody's clear about that.
right, because you have a lease agreement of 100,000.
Correct, and this is 167, so it actually swing us in the wrong way, 67,000 on the budget.
It would, but that's a multi-year lease agreement. You've got,
It is, yep. Yeah, it is. Page 2. Is there anything on this page that you guys want to discuss? In your packet, I did provide to you a analysis on the assessor's office from some other towns that were, at least in my estimation, similar in either square mileage or population to us.
well, I just think there's a lot of, if I can speak, I think there's a lot of factors that go into it other than just numbers. And I appreciate you getting this information for us. But so when we look at our town and our town employees, it's our responsibility as selectmen to always look at the taxpayer and what he pays, and the taxpayer is getting their best return on their investment. So I agree with that. But also we have a town where we have a lot of knowledge of people that have been in town hall for a long time, and it's tough to put a dollar value on that knowledge. So I don't want to speak about any particular individual because we would do that in executive session, but in general, I'm talking about the position. It so happens that we have a lot of positions in town hall. We have a lot of people with a lot of knowledge, not just the area, but multiple areas and within the town hall. So I think it's just not cut and dry on if you look at a number and say, okay, that's too high for that particular department. It's what do the employees that are in that department bring to the table? What kind of longevity do they have? And is there a way that we can work on some sort of a compromise? So I remember when a few years back when there was a town employee let go that had been here a long time, and it set off a firestorm because of the fact that not only was that employee knowledgeable, but it probably was a loss to the town by losing an employee with so much knowledge of the town's inner working. So again, I see numbers, but I also think that it has to be discussions made, and we have to look at all aspects. But I do agree, as a selectman, I need to look at the bottom line when it comes to taxpayers and what they're paying, but it's not always cut and dry. There's some gray areas, and I'll just leave it at that for now.
Do you have anything to add?
No.
The only thing I would add is where we've tried to be very thoughtful about when changes are made and actually, whether people are aware of it or not, really try to work with people if a change is proposed or whatever. And, I think that's evidenced by when we had the tax collector position vacated, we didn't look to make a change until we had somebody new coming in. And that's when we made a change. So I think that is not a bad way to look at it. I also think if you're, again, the selectmen asked me to gather this information, which is what I did. I do think that we have proposed for this consultant, which we all agreed and really strongly advocated for in the off season, I guess you'd say, last year, to try to get this consultant who would do an analysis of where our strengths are and what opportunities we have. And so again, that's probably a good opportunity to take a look at everything and get some feedback on a position like that. So I'm not in the opposition of letting that lie for now. So with that being said, I don't know if there's anything else on this page that you guys wanted to take a look at.
No, I'm good with this page.
All right. Page 3. Again, we've already kind of went through all this last time. I don't know if anything else is, you want any other changes here?
Fine with this page.
Yeah, I'm all right.
All right, so page 4, we have some, so we do have, let's see, volunteer, this is stuff we haven't talked about. There's volunteer fire company insurance, as well as other volunteer compensation that's being proposed. So I guess we could start the discussion about the fire company. Is there anything you want to see changed or question here?
What line are we starting on, Mike?
I mean, so we went over most things. The volunteer fire company insurance, which is B2001, has an adjustment of $840.
Mhm.
Ambulance Association insurance is just a zeroed out there. Then I think we go down to B2007 is the next line. Again, these are things we didn't really talk about last time. I don't know, Christine, if there's anything you want to point out specifically.
I'm not in fixed charges.
Okay. So, I mean, if there's no questions, obviously the chief presented to us with the Board of Finance. So if you're good with this, we can move on to the next page unless you have any other changes here on this page.
I can,
Split between B26 and B20, so there may be things in B26 that people want to talk about that are not part of B20.
Okay, I'm sorry, Bob, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say with what we heard from the presentation earlier and the chief's presentation, most of the stuff on this particular page is all contractual with insurance. And as far as the stipends go, I didn't have a problem with that because of, again, a lot to do with the presentation earlier this evening on what our fire company has to deal with as far as square miles, space, highways. They're up against a lot, and they have one station and man it. And yeah, I've got no problem with that, so I'm good.
All right, I'm going to move on to page 5. Again, we went through, most of this last time. All of this last time. Before we get down to B2601. B2601 is where there's a small increase.
So Mike, I think I asked this before on the 26, I'm fine with the increases on 2601. On 2604, the state troopers, I know we have to budget for these things, but if these things don't take place, these monies go back. They don't get spent, correct? Because parade, chicken booster race, also an education foundation race and so on. I mean, they're budgeted for them now, but unless these events take place, that these numbers don't get paid, they just go back in, or they don't get spent, correct?
In theory, they should not be spent, no, and so like they're not spent on those things. I think I explained this last time when we talked about this line that, with COVID and some of the additional duties that the troopers had to do this year, they definitely, it's definitely looking like they're going to use their line, and that would include those funds as well. However, it's really just we have grant monies that are going to offset it. So basically, what'll happen probably at the end of the year is you'll see that their line has been exhausted. But we'll have grant monies that come in and kind of replenish some of that. So that's probably how it's going to shake out. But in a normal year, Bob, yes, you're absolutely correct. We, obviously I don't authorize overtime unless it's necessary. And we try to stick to just these events that we have planned.
Except for this year, which is, we'll call it, the 2020 was the year of COVID, but prior to that, is there typically a give back at the end of the year from the state police, or they typically spend their budget?
There has been, for the last couple of years, but I think part of that was the just how budgeting was. If you remember, before we got here, they had 3 troopers.
Mhm.
I think that changed the year maybe before we took office. They went down to 2. So I think that then there was just the figuring out the budgeting on that. So I mean, we've got a pretty good sense of where the budget should be on the trooper line. So I wouldn't, I certainly wouldn't change anything that's here probably. Unless we really had to, because otherwise, I'm not really sure we'd be able to adhere to it. But
Christine, can you answer on 2606, the miscellaneous and the equipment and supplies increase for the civil preparedness unit? Can you just tell us what that is?
So Gary has, the emergency management director has money that's budgeted because you don't know, that's the nature of an emergency. You don't know what's going to happen. So he has to leave things labeled as miscellaneous because he doesn't know if he's going to need to buy bottled water to provide for people, or different supplies to deal with whether we have a hurricane or a snow event where something gets knocked out that he needs to deal with. He's constantly in communication whenever we have any sort of an issue. Our emergency operations center has been partially activated this entire year because of COVID. So he just has a variety of different things that come up. So his supplies are things like right now, hand sanitizer, PPE that he needs, and different equipment for that. So on most years, hopefully he will not actually spend all the money that we budget, but because of an emergency, you need to have some funding in there in case something inevitably happens.
Thank you.
Anything else on this page?
Mhm.
I don't think so.
Okay. Moving on to page 6 verses. This is where the staffing increase has come in for the emergency services fire company, per diem staff, as well as the town property labor line, which is large increase. So I guess, going down it, unless there's anything else you guys want to talk about here. The volunteer fire company per diem staffing, last year we didn't approve that. And the Board of Finance overrode us on it and did approve it after the public hearing. Last year it was funded at the one volunteer, position, and now they're looking for the second one, which is what they originally had requested. Of course, the request last year was for $100,000. They explained the reasoning for the $70,000 ask this year at the meeting with the Board of Finance versus it just being another 50. Discussion on that?
So Mike, I agree. We did not fund that last year. We were overridden by the Board of Finance. Since then, I've had discussions with the fire company, different people connected with the fire company, and I'll tell you, they've told me success stories since we've had the per diem on times where there's been an incident or fire where they've been able to get to it within 10 to 15 minutes with the per diem and one of our volunteers that could show up and probably limiting potential damage, could be loss of life, who knows. So again, listening to the report that Tricia gave us earlier, I'm thinking that I don't know many towns that have the kind of square mileage that we have with one firehouse. We rely a lot on our volunteer fire company. So I think I was in probably a different frame of mind last year as far as thought of what this was. But now that I've seen it in action and I've heard stories about how it's worked, it makes more sense to me this year. So I am not going to, I am in favor of the request for the second per diem at this stage. And I understand the chief explained, I understand the increase, what that means. So I still think getting a per diem at $60,000 a year and having that insurance policy for the town to have the two of them on, and you probably know that's a rotating, that's not just one person, there's a number of people that rotate through that position. And from what I found through my own discussions is these are very capable people that have this position. This isn't just, some high school kid that's a volunteer fireman hanging around the station during the day. These are very well-trained firemen that know what they're doing, and I think it's important to the town that we, as we grow and as we tout what we have, people a lot of times will say, well, what do I get for my tax dollar, and how is that measured? And I think that we always say, well, we have great schools and we have a new fire EMS building, but we talk about the building, but we don't talk about what's in it. And I think that in this particular case, having a really strong fire company makes a difference. So I'm on board with that second per diem at this stage.
Ida?
Yes, I can go along with that.
All right.
Thoughts, Mike?
Well, I think the findings of the committee are helpful. And I think that, there is a real issue here that we have to deal with. I guess in my optimism, I'd like to see us get more volunteers during the day. It's not happening. I think there's more people that are home, but it's not happening. So you just can't buck with reality. I mean, if it's not happening, I don't know why it's not happening. I think there were some good proposals that were put forth from the committee that we could discuss. And I think some of those discussions should happen probably in collaboration with the fire company. So when we talk about things like, right now we have certain rewards incentives for volunteers. And granted, it's certainly not, I'm sure peanuts for what it is, but there are rewards incentives, there are stipends that happen. And one of the things that the committee was talking about was, potential tax incentives or tax breaks. Yeah, I think those things should be discussed. Is there a way to get more volunteers by implementing some of those things? But unfortunately, I don't see that happening before we put a budget forth. I think those are some discussions that have to probably take some time. I also would like to think that, these are per diem. So if we were to have discussions like that and there was a way to incent more volunteerism and remove these costs, I'd like to see us do that. But, this is a real situation right now that, warrants attention. I'm not sure about the $70,000 number. Even when I asked the question, I don't think it needs to be that much. I think some of that was costs that might be a little bit inflated there. In my opinion, just based on the feedback I got on the question. I'm not suggesting that there's any purposeful inflation of the number. I think that the calculations just may be a little bit high because we were talking about some of the costs associated with unemployment factors with the state and things of that nature, which I don't think those numbers are actually that high. So, my opinion would be more to go with like if we're going to fund it, I think, 60,000 or something like that. To me, that maybe is a little bit more reasonable, but we could get some more clarity on it before we put forth kind of a final to the town to drill down on that a little bit.
Don't forget, you're not looking at 70 per man, Mike. That 70 was 60 plus 10 for the per diem that was already there from last year.
Yeah, so it's 50. Yes, it's 50 plus 10.
Correct.
For both of them.
Correct.
I don't think the 10 is 10. That's what I think, but that's just my opinion. So I'd probably like some backup on that. But for now, that's nickels and dimes. That's fine. We can leave the 70 in there, maybe get some backup on that, so we just make sure it's comfortable. I think the main discussion we're having here is, do we want to move it forward? And I'm not opposed to moving it forward. And it sounds like everybody's okay with that right now. So, so if we can move on then with that. We have the maintenance line, which we talked about. We talked about these things last time, as well as the labor position. Any additional conversation on any of that?
I have none.
Nita?
Second, give me a second there. Okay, no, it's fine. Okay.
At page 7. Again, I think we talked about. Did we skip over ambulance or no?
Yes, we did.
We did.
Yeah, they are B2612.
What
Okay.
number is it?
Page 6, B2612.
Yeah, sorry about that. That I just want to mention it because they obviously also presented to us, and they didn't really ask for any increase. And they are going to move to a full-time staffing model, which I think we all think is fantastic. Within the funds that they have been allocated, they've found a way to make that work. So I would wholeheartedly support their budget request, and I'm excited that they're able to do that. So did you want to have any further discussion on that?
No, I think they presented a fair budget.
Okay.
That's
All right. So sorry to have gone backwards. I think we were on page 7. I don't know if there's anything else here.
The only thing I would say in this, Mike, is I think we need to discuss the electric truck a little bit more. As far as if, as I mentioned to you before, at our last discussion, I said I would let it go through until we heard from the Board of Finance, and if the Board of Finance put this back at us, that would be the first place I go, but I don't think I need to wait for that. As I did some investigating on my own and found out about additional cost and question marks. So here's some questions I have. First of all, we know, according to the gentleman you had speak that evening, that we're probably looking at around $350,000 for this truck. And that's the cost of the vehicle and the battery. But there's charging stations that had to be had. We didn't have any discussion whether they have to have more than one at one of the town garage and maybe one at the transfer station. We also didn't talk much about repair. Right now, any of our trucks can be repaired. We have a fantastic mechanic on hand at the highway garage now. If this is a truck he wouldn't be able to work on, we'd have to get an outsider to come in and work on this if there's an issue. Another thing is the
So let me slow you down, Bob, because I do have answers to a couple of these and I don't want to lose track of them.
okay.
We hadn't talked about it in our meeting, but I certainly had talked about it with Donnie. And, we did not intend on 2 charging stations. We felt that one would be acceptable. And we know that there's a cost associated with putting that in. The second thing is we do send out our trucks for repair right now. Yes, we do have a mechanic on hand, but there are certain repairs that the mechanic we have isn't going to be able to fix. So it's not uncommon that a truck would be sent out for repair even. So that's not something out of the ordinary, but continue.
All right, on pots, like I know that at one point I owned a foreign car, and when I had a headlight go out, it was like a $300 charge to get a new headlight put on. It was one of my older Fords or Chevys. I could have went to Benny's and got one for $29.95. So, that's just an example. But in this case, since this is a new electric vehicle, if we need to get parts for repair, what kind of pricing are we looking at? Because for just a common part versus one on a regular truck, that's a question I have. And then secondly, in order to get this grant, we have to pretty much destroy the truck that we have. That at this point is still working in pretty good working form. I know we have a backup for it. We have an older truck at the garage. I think it's a 1975 or 76 that we keep and we own outright, and we keep that in case something happens to this truck. But it just didn't seem right to destroy a working vehicle to get a grant for a truck that's 3 times more expensive. It could be as much as 3 times more expensive. So I just think there's more discussion that needs to be had with this rather than just putting forth, have this approved in the budget. And I guess another question is, you said you talked to Donnie about it. Can you give me what his I know he's out right now. So can you tell me what kind of feedback he had on that? Is this something he advocated for, was totally for or against, mixed feelings, more information? Where did he stand being the foreman of the highway department?
Oh, well, he was open-minded to it, certainly. I mean, it wouldn't have made it in the budget if he wasn't. And I think parts are expensive regardless of what type of vehicle you have. And certainly a new truck, it's possible. But I think what we talked about at the last meeting was that these trucks do not require the maintenance that a normal diesel vehicle would require. Now, you're talking about an accident or something like that. Obviously, that's a different scenario about, having to get some parts. But I mean, it's still a regular vehicle as far as if you crack a fender up or something like that, you're gonna have to pay to fix it if we were. So I mean, I recognize and understand your concerns that you're bringing up. Certainly valid points.
So I'll make a motion that we remove this line item from the, I don't think the town taxpayer can afford this right now. I don't think the town can afford it, and I'll make a motion to remove this from the budget.
Is there a second?
I'll second it, actually, because I think it's relatively new and it's not something that we can do at this point in time. I
So
guess.
I'm just going to point out the fact that we voted to task the grant writer with looking at this grant, to apply for this grant, to use the town funds to look into this grant. Granted, the fact we did say that, yeah, we don't have to take it if we get it. I think this is a horrible decision to not move forward with this truck. Not only can we be a leader, I mean, if there's something a town should be doing, it's being a leader on this, what is really low-hanging fruit from an environmental standpoint. The town, has capital needs. This is a capital need for the town. We have an opportunity to get a $167,000 grant for this truck that is going to serve the town well into the future. And I think this is a grave error to not include this, and especially to just take it out before we've even brought it forward at all. I mean, I think the people have an absolute, I think this should at least make it to public hearing. To take it out now without it going to even a public hearing that's a horrible mistake, in my opinion. Yes, Nita.
Well, can we get more sort of simple information about it with regards to, like, how long has it been on the market? How many of these are around, et cetera? So
I would suggest that we include a fairly, I would dedicate, 5 or 10 minutes to this in a public hearing to propose, to show the information about it. I mean, it's fine if people don't want to spend, if we want to just forego the grant, then that's fine. I disagree with it, but I'm just one person. But I think it's a disservice to just literally vote this out without it going further. I mean, we obtained a $167,000 grant for this truck. I think that would be a grave disservice to just not move this forward and attempt to have more dialogue about it.
Mike, we did vote to have it go out to see what we could get in a grant. I agree with you on that, but just because we got a grant, we didn't know what that amount was going to be or what the amount of the total amount of the truck would be to buy it. So you get the grant, so you get information, and then you can make a more intelligent decision. After seeing the grant, yes, it's a lot of money, but there's still a lot of money to go in this vehicle. It's not like it's paying for the vehicle and we're getting it for free or throwing another 20 grand at it. We're throwing a large number at it. I mean, I was figuring it's at least $180,000 and could be more when we talk about some of the things that go with it. So I agree. I did agree to send it out to get information, because the more information you have, the better decision you can make. The fact that you're saying that it should at least be aired at a town meeting, when 2 minutes ago you were telling me that you don't think that the 298 building needs to be aired at a town meeting. And I know it's apples and oranges, but how can you say that we need to?
We took that to a vote, Bob. We literally went to referendum on 298.
Let's table that, because that's another discussion. I know, but I'm just saying, I'm remarking on what you feel like needs to go in front of the people versus what doesn't need to go in front of the people.
That's fine. We can agree to disagree. I have said my piece about it. I don't know, Nita, if you have anything else you want to offer. There's a motion and a second on the table to remove it.
Well, I will change my mind, and I will say that it should go to a meeting.
So did you take back the second? Is that what you're saying? Or are we voting and you're voting no? Which?
Yes, I am saying that if the information is something that people might want, we should put it out there.
I mean,
present it, and the kind of meeting that we usually have, I don't know if this would be a hard thing to put out there. How would you do that at the meeting?
I would just include it as part of the budget. I mean, when we've had large items like this, like for instance, the tanker, which was just last year or the year before, we dedicated a period of time at the public hearing to explain why the tanker was a benefit. Now, I agree. It is a truck that could continue. I mean, I think we have in the budget money to refurb it. I mean, that would come out of the budget if we continue with this. We don't need to obviously spend that money. I think the people should hear about it. And I think we should, if there's feedback, we could react to that feedback. So that's my only thing about it. And I'm not opposed to removing it if people say, listen, this is a waste or whatever. I don't see it. I see it as an opportunity for North Stonington to be the sustainable community that we are and be a leader with something like this. And granted, I mean, we could also, I put in here a lease number, which was basically for a 3-year lease. That could be longer, right?
4
4 years. What, four is it, Christine?
Yeah, or I have it in the description.
Oh, sorry, 4. I apologize, 4. That's right. That could be longer, that could be shorter. And the minute we do remove it, I mean, yes, it is a 4-year payment, so we're obligated to that for 4 years if we decide to lease it. But if we do remove it, we also remove the grant income, which exceeds the first-year payment. So it will actually hurt the budget this year. I know helps the budget.
So Mike, you said it's $100,000 for 4 years, that's $400,000. So if you take the 167 out, the town's still for 230 some odd $1,000. Right?
Yeah, I mean, we're getting a truck. It costs money. So you're right. There is a cost to it.
You could buy 2 of the other trucks for that.
I don't know that that's accurate.
I think you
It's
could buy
actually,
another truck for around $125,000 to $130,000.
so we don't share a position on the importance of this, and that's okay.
So there's no longer a motion, is that correct?
No, you can't just remove a motion. She made the motion. We should vote on it. You guys, unless you both want to rescind your motions, which Bob, I don't think you do. So
I'd like to vote on it if we could.
I'm sure you would. All in favor of removing the truck from the budget, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I did, I.
Wait. So Nita, do the vote again.
I'm
No,
sorry,
I-
Anita, are you opposed to, do you want to remove it or you?
I did go back to first, what I said before the first time, because if, I can't get a picture in my mind of how we can get this across easily to the people. And I don't think it's going to be useful and for this year. I think it should have more of a longer, it should be something that we know more about. At least I need to know more about it to really be comfortable. So that's what I'm at. Sorry, Mike.
So the motion carries, the truck will be removed as well as the revenue. Moving on. Is there anything else on this page that you want to review?
No.
Anything on the final page that you'd like to review?
Just that, as I mentioned earlier, that the 2 line items were added, C3.51 and 3.51 and 3.52, just so those that know what they were. You had asked about putting in money for a water infrastructure, which we agreed to at the last meeting. And we also agreed as a group that we thought that we should look at the consultant come in and look at the town in general with town employees. And I think we all kind of agreed on that. So I didn't know, I can't remember if there was a vote taken or not, or whether we just agreed. That's one of the things I said I didn't see in the minutes. But I know I was for putting it back in, and it is back in. So I just can't remember whether we voted on it or whether we just agreed.
I don't recall. I think we, if no one else recalls, then I don't want to comment on it. I think the best thing to do is if for some reason, Bob, you would like to see a motion just to affirm that that line item is in there, then you go ahead and make one. But I mean, it's in the budget. Whether we voted or not, I don't recall.
No, if it's in there, that's fine for now. We'll let the Board of Finance discuss it.
Okay, so any other comments on the budget? Okay. No other comments on the budget? We have minutes.
Okay, let's, I motion that we approve the minutes of the meeting on February 9th, 2021 as submitted by Bailey.
Are we on the revised one, Bob? Which,
We have a revised set of minutes?
okay, sorry. I got the 9th now.
Okay. Do we have a second on that so we can discuss it or not yet?
Second.
Sorry, I was muted. Is there further discussion?
Just that we said that on our next meeting. This was the February 9th meeting, and now this is our second meeting since. I know one of them was a special meeting, but we talked about having our next meeting, we would discuss putting together the committee on the school use and working together with the real estate agent. I know we've had people submit names and we haven't done that, so I suggested we put that on our next agenda.
Yeah, the only reason I didn't add it was because I hadn't heard back from one of the committees that we indicated we wanted membership from. So yeah, hopefully at the next agenda, we'd be able to appoint that group.
The only other thing is there was we showed the motion and the vote on, and maybe Christine answered this already. We showed the motion and the vote on the selectmen's compensation and how that went, but there was other changes made that evening, and apparently unless we voted on them, they're not in here. So I think moving forward, when we make a change, so we don't have this question like we have tonight in the recollecting if was there a vote or not on that item we just talked about on the budget. I think we should have those recorded when we make changes. Either bring them to a vote, or at least have recorded in the minutes that a change was made.
Well, there is no question. So if it was voted on, it's in the minutes. So I guess I apologize when I said I wasn't sure and couldn't recall. If it were voted on, it would have been included in the minutes. So we obviously didn't vote on it, Bob.
All right, so I'm just saying, moving forward in the minutes, and I'm willing to accept these minutes as written, but moving forward, my recommendation would be that when we make changes to the budget, they're reflected in the minutes, that's all.
That's I hear that. I think that warrants further discussion, maybe.
It can just be a discussion point. I don't need to make a motion on it or anything.
Yeah. I just like, for instance, the first iteration of the budget, there's a lot of changes that we end up making. So it's just a lot of, and I'm not saying there's a problem with it. I'm literally talking this out as you brought it up. So yeah, I think we should talk about it more, but so.
Maybe going forward, we can start doing that only because it'll be less, the number of changes will be less. I mean, I can't imagine.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So that's it. I have no other discussion on this set of minutes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Nita, did you vote in favor? I didn't hear you.
Yes, I did.
Thank you.
Okay, then I would like to motion that we accept the meeting from February 10th, 2021 as submitted by Bailey, which was a joint meeting with the Board of Finance.
A second.
Any further discussion on the minutes from the 10th? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 3-0-0.
And the last one, I make a motion, we accept the minutes for the February 16th meeting submitted by Bailey.
I'm not going to second this, I don't think, because it looks to me like there's something in here that doesn't make too much sense. Needs a minor change. Should I
Why don't make an amendment? We can amend them.
It's the item number 3, the Board of Selectmen reviewed, review, and capital line items and made revisions. It's just,
It should say revenue. It should probably say revenue.
oh. Okay.
You can make a motion to approve them as amended, Nita.
Okay.
Or Bob, did you make a motion?
I made a motion, but it hasn't been seconded yet.
Okay, do you want to just withdraw it?
I'll withdraw the motion.
Okay, and I'm recommending that we go forward with a change, an amendment.
So we'll amend them to say reviewed revenue and capital line items.
Thank you.
Thank you for noticing that, Nita.
I'd like to make an amendment also, if I could.
Yeah.
On same thing on item 3, line C. Motion by Selectman Carlson to raise line items C 3.15 by $7,000. Seconded by Selectman Kincaid. Motion approved 3-0. In actuality, I did not raise that line item by 7,000. I decreased it. It was proposed at 29,000. We lowered it to 7,000.
Oh, good catch. That's a very important catch.
Thank you for catching that as well. All right, so that's the second amendment, and that's fine. So we already have a motion from Nita to approve the minutes as amended. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Public comments on agenda items. Any public comments on the agenda items?
All right. Phone number ending in 9339. You're recognized.
You just have to unmute 9339. Maybe that's Joe Gross, I think. Your volume's not working. Bailey, I don't know if there's anybody else in the queue. I apologize, ending in 9339, we cannot hear you. So we'll go to the next if there's another hand.
Looks like Sean, you see you're recognized.
Yes, with the truck that was recommended to be replaced, I haven't heard anything about what a recent maintenance record has been on it or the number of total miles on it. What is there? Does it even need replaced?
Thank you for the comment, Sean. We don't have that information tonight, and I'm not sure that we'll probably bring it up since it was removed from the from consideration. But
okay, so it's off the table at this time. Thank you.
Thanks, Sean. All right. Phone number ending in 9339. You're recognized.
I do apologize, caller. We cannot hear you. There's nothing in our control to be able to hear you. So I'm sorry that we're not going to be able to hear whatever comment that you have. Truly apologize for that. Are there any other callers, Bailey?
No.
Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Before we adjourn, question? Don't we have
Yes.
to vote on the budget before, so we can send it to the Board of Finance? Do we have to vote on it as we've constructed it, so we can send it to the Board of Finance?
So we have to vote, that's a good point, Bob. We have to vote on the budget before we send it to the town meeting. I do not think that we have numbers in real time ready to send to the Board of Finance as far as all the changes we've made. If the Board of Selectmen would like to meet maybe before the Board of Finance meeting to kind of look at the numbers so you know what they are in totality before presenting to the Board of Finance, we could certainly do that.
Well, they're not meeting tomorrow, right? They're meeting a week from Wednesday.
Yeah.
So could we meet before they meet at 7? Could we meet either at
That's a great
6:30 that
idea.
evening and?
Yeah, we can do that. We can meet before that. I mean, I'll have a presentation ready to go based on the numbers. I mean, just looking at the numbers, I mean, it's, there's obviously going to be an increase based on what we have here. But I mean, we've gone through and made decisions that we felt were right. So we'll put it together and we'll have a special meeting prior to their meeting so we can look at it all together.
But Mike, weren't they asking last week at the meeting that they wanted to get all of this information that we put in ahead of time? In other words, it seemed like they were saying, when we're done with looking at it, that we're supposed to give it to them as quick as possible to get things done. I got that feeling from what they were saying.
I mean, so you're can I make a comment?
Sure.
So you present the expenses in theory to the Board of Finance, not necessarily the revenue, or is that just for the town meeting?
We'll present the entire budget we'll present everything to the Board of Finance. So they can,
typically, they'll.
the expenses is what we have to present to them. That's correct. And before we send it to town meeting, we need to agree on a number to send to to send to the public hearing.
So their packet, like your packet, will be posted 24 hours in advance, so they would need the budget 24 hours in advance.
Yeah, so they'll get whatever they'll have advance notice on looking at it, Nita.
Okay, but if I listened, they were almost fighting about it being many more days than that.
I don't think they wanted it, I think they wanted the presentation earlier, not the piece of paper,
Okay.
I think, but I don't know.
All right, it's fine.
We'll do the best we can as we always do, so. Motion to adjourn?
I motion to adjourn.
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Have a good night, everybody.